All right, Shalom Yashrael. This is a calendar study here that you could say is 10 years plus in the making. But the recent years I've been really into it, getting some revelation on different matters here. So used to do kind of like the Zadok calendar, but my friends and I down south here, we're on a certain type of calendar where we believed. Where I believed with them at the time that this was the first place on the flat earth that received equal parts day and night as we were studying Enoch, and just doing a solar only calendar at the time. And then, so to start off this calendar study, we'll just quickly go over all the references to Pesach on the 14th, because Pesach is definitely how you want to start your year, with the first major feast, which is why we need the calendar. So there's 10 witnesses for Pesach on the 14th. Now, mind you, I used to go along with a study that said Pesach was on the 10th, but there is some interesting, in Enoch it does mention 4 intercalary days that aren't counted and things like that. So there's some interesting things, and with the Zadok calendar, those days come into play on how you count and start, and when you start. Basically, a lot of them start on the first day of Sunday. But on the 14th, it says, interesting passage, Jubilees 48:18. On the 14th, we bound Mastema, it's talking about him, that he may not accuse the children of Israel. So at this time, there was a doctrine kind of established where we thought it was the 10th and not the 14th, Pesach, because we know Mastema was loose and he was wreaking havoc, and that's why he had to put the blood over the door. But it really only states Mastema was bound and imprisoned behind the children of Israel. So if you can imagine like a force field protecting Israel from Mastema. Then on the 19th, he was no longer bound against Israel, so he was able to convince the Egyptians to pursue Israel. So nothing like bad could happen to Israel until he was unbound, and then he was immediately the Egyptians tried to go kill Israel, right? But it really has nothing to do with Mastema being bound in the inner flat earth where he can't get out in jail or anything and harm the Egyptians, because it's just being bound behind the children of Israel. And then we also see in Jubilees, it talks about the spirit of Mastema in Jubilees 19:28. So there's spirits that he commands, legions of demons probably. But the main point there is that, yes, Mastema was still able to kill anybody that was not Israel, and Israel was always been those keeping the commandments of Yah. So if you're keeping the commandments of Yah, doing the Pesach, blood over the doorpost, Mastema was bound, and not able to harm Israel. So that clears that up. That's a very deep study that most people never get to, but they may notice a little inconsistency there. Like, if Mastema is bound, how can he kill all the firstborn Egyptians and stuff? Well, that solves that. He was just, says in the text, he was just bound behind the children of Israel, and only them. So, if you can imagine, just like in the book of Psalms, it says, put a hedge of protection around me, around my home, around Israel, that we have a hedge of protection around us because we try to keep the commandments. So yeah, very good. So, but moving on from that, so Jubilees will say, those who follow the moon will be in error, and years will come in too short. So the way I started keeping the calendar is to use sun, moon, and stars. So one, if you misunderstand this, you might say, oh, you can't use the moon at all, disqualified, you're under arrest. But if you can just understand here, if you just do 12 lunar months, like it says in the book of Enoch, each year you'll come in 10 days too short. So eventually, your first month of the year will drift into winter, and then eventually fall, because you're losing 10 days every year. So you have to, like Genesis says, use the sun, moon, and stars. So we'll get to that. If we were to use the sun only for a calendar, So here's where the problem comes in. We used to keep it in the Philippines, which there's a video saying that there's a spot in the Philippines that could be the Mount of the East, which is above the Garden of Eden. That's great. So we used to keep it there. We thought it was the first place on the flat Earth to get 9 parts night equal to the day, 9 parts. But it's not. I found a week before this spot in the Philippines where we used to measure it from. It's called Bogotá, Colombia, and they have it all the way in late February. So that was not the first place. And later on, we'll see. Really, it's not really the first place, but it's the largest place that gets equal parts day and night. It goes from like Israel, maybe even south of Israel, all the way to Greenland, where they get equal parts day and night. I believe on the same exact day, which this year, 26, was the 17th of March. Okay, but it does matter where, if you're doing a sun-only calendar, it does matter where you start. Most people start from Israel, and then they have to figure out, the 4 days, and like, do they start on a Wednesday because blah, 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 do they start on a Sunday? There's a little bit of argument there, I think, too. But the place on the flat Earth that most accurately describes the sun's light portions, not in the Philippines like I used to do, and it's not even in Israel, because right after Enoch talks about this, it says it gives you the ratio. So spring is 9 parts night to 9 parts light. Let's see here. In the summer, it's supposed to be 12 parts light to 6 parts darkness. And then again in the fall, you have 9 parts equal day and night. And then the winter, the ratio that Enoch describes in Enoch 72:26 is 12 parts darkness to 6 parts light. That's the ratio. Again, the Philippines and Israel, they don't match that. Israel's closer than the Philippines, but Philippines is like equal parts day and night, like close to equal parts day and night year round. And then I imagine Bogotá, Colombia, which is the first place on the flat Earth that I can find that gets it equal parts day and night all the way like in the middle of February to the end of February. It's probably equal there. Day and night's probably pretty equal there all year round too. And then when you go past that on the flat Earth, everything's a reflection. So if you go in the southern hemisphere, everything's flipped. Like your fall is your spring, your fall equinox is your spring equinox. So I don't really know how you would keep the feast down there. Besides if you're on solar only. But that's the thing with the solar only calendar. You could be in different spots of the flat Earth and it kind of messes up. And I'm not 100% sure yet, but I think the solar lunar calendar, you could, as long as you find the equal parts day and night, and things are reversed, and what the north is doing, like it's their spring, then because the moon is the same on the whole flat Earth, so you just wait for the new moon and that's your first month. But everything is north-centric in the Bible, okay? Israel is in the northern hemisphere. It's a flat Earth, but we'll call it, say, hemisphere, whatever, hemisdome. What do you call it? Maybe what is that? The perceptual dome, but what we see in the sky is not, it has our eyes kind of see the sun, and it may not really be in there. It's a reflection off the atmospheric dome is what it is when you really study the flat Earth, the very complicated stuff. And there's reflections, like there's even a 24-hour sun in the southern pole, supposedly, but everything is a reflection. And if you really want to study dome and light, you can see how this can manifest in the visual optics, but it's very complicated, and I'm not fresh on that study right now, and that's a wild, deep, complicated study. But it does matter where you start. Everything is north-centric. The Mount Zion, the tall tower, everything, that the meeting place of Yah, that's in the north. So everything is kind of, and maybe when Enoch was writing this thing, they were closer to the North Pole, and we'll see that here, because can't say that word, but Chugabagaman, Canada, and Ireland, places like that, they do fit the description. I measured it in 25, March 17th again, just like it was this year, was the equal parts day and night in this place in Canada and Ireland. And then July 12th was the sun is exactly double to the darkness. October 11th, equal parts day and night. And December 19th, night is near double by the light, or compared to the light. It's off by 5 minutes, which is pretty close. I couldn't find anything much closer. It's way off in Israel compared to this spot. So then the next question is, it's pretty complicated where, most of these people with the Zadok are keeping it from Israel. Now, you see here, though, that it's the same day. So there's this large spot on the flat earth where the equal parts day and night, all the way in Canada, Ireland, it's going to be the same as Israel. So that's really the place where you should use it if you're doing sun only. And you'll see that if you use it there, you will, I think it's every 6 years, you'll get to the point where it matches the scriptures. It's just 1 out of 6 years. If you use the moon, the method I'm about to explain, you'll get it every year, where your feast is 1 day before what the Jews do now, which is what we see Yahusha doing in scriptures. So if you're keeping it from the Philippines or the first place on the flat earth, you'll never get to 1 day before Yahusha, the way Yahusha did it 1 day before the Jews now. So you'll just never get that. But if you measure from Israel or this place that accurately fits the description, Enoch, with the equal parts day and night in the summer and winter, the double light to darkness in the summer and double darkness to light in the winter, this is the accurate description place that we can measure this and see this. But it's the same as Israel, the day. So that's a positive for the Zadok calendar, but it's not totally correct, and you'll see why. Should we use the sun, moon, and stars? Yes. Okay. Right after Enoch 72, or the sun chapter, is the Enoch 73 moon chapter. And then we have this scripture that the solar only people hate. They cross it out. They do whatever to. They come up with weird excuses. Like I heard a weird one the other day. But Sirach 43, 6 through 8. He made the Uraka, which is moon, also to serve in her season for a decoration of times and a oat of the world. From the Uraka is the oat of feast, a light that is decreased in her perfection. The Kadesh is called after her name. That's Kadesh means renewal. So renewing of what? Renewing of the moon. And we'll move on from that. And then another big one in Psalms 104:19, he created the Yaraka for Moedim / appointed times. Now people will say appointed times like it brings in the tides and stuff, but this word is appointed times. It also is Moedim, and Moedims is the appointed times of the feast. So come on, they twist stuff. Enoch 73 may be describing what the moon is like at the beginning of the year, and it is, because I wrote this before I knew. Now I tested it. The new moon that rises with the sun, and Enoch says, I think it's the 4th gate in the spring and the 3rd gate in the fall. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's how it is. Okay, the 4th gate in spring. This is the new moon that is closest to the sun, exactly right by the sun as the sun rises. So, and this is where the Jews go astray, because there's a day where you can't see the moon. It has disappeared, so that's your new moon. But they measure their calendar the day after because of probably their influence in Babylon. But really, the moon disappears on this day when it's right aligned with the sun, and this happens in the spring, equal parts day and night, and the fall, equal parts day and night, and no other. And also, when we do start seeing a sliver moon, it appears to be a ram's horn. It's just like a ram's horn. It's because usually like the bowl, it's like a bowl. It's like this or whatever. But usually the moon, it's tipped. It's all kinds of ways. It's upside down. But this part, in the spring, it's like that. And then right behind the sun is the zodiac symbol, the Aries, the ram, 2 out of the 3 years when you're keeping Pesach. And the 3rd year is a bull. So we see in Enoch animal vision, the lambs become bulls. So, through the power of Yah, we become more dominant. We, like a ruler. And that's what Yashrael means, the rule with Yah. So Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the Shemaim to divide the yom, or day, from the night, the Lila. And let them be for signs, witnesses, and for Moedim, or the appointed time again, and for days and years. So them means Let there be lights in the firmament. Them, we can use the sun, moon, and stars. Okay, so what would Yahusha do? Yahusha kept Passover a day before the so-called Jews. Turns out the Jews they don't just follow the moon. They wait for equal parts day and night. Then they take the first new moon. Like I said before, they probably learned in Babylon to do it a day late because the moon will actually disappear. There's no sliver that you can see. And it happened, I believe, if I can remember right, this is 2026. It happened March 17th. The Jews say, so yeah, March 17th was also the equal parts day and night this year. So that's why my calendar is aligned with the Zadok calendar this year. And it only happens every 6 years. So I get to go celebrate with people that are on this Jerusalem Zadok calendar this year, but won't be able to in other times. Okay, so it turns out the so-called Jews, blah, 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 okay, their method's off. And what I've written here, I would change because I keep learning and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong. Like I could be wrong about this study. The Zadok people could be right. But I'm going to say no, that they're wrong. And you'll see why more. But anyway, I explained how they take their moon first day, the first new moon day. It's a day late. And that's why Yahusha had his feast, a day before. The Last Supper was a day before the Jews' feast, because when they crucified him on the stake, they had to get him down from the stake and go celebrate their Pesach. But Yahusha did the Pesach a day before. Now, interesting enough, because the Zadok calendar, because every once in a while the new moon lands on the same day as the equal parts day and night in Jerusalem, so because of that, we start the count to 14 at the same time. So every once in a while, the Zadok people, so the Zadok people, that doesn't disqualify them. They could just say that particular year it happened to line up and Yahusha kept it a day before the Jews, and that's what explains that for them. But if you're keeping it like a different location, the south, it'll never match up for you, which is what I used to do. So here's a very interesting one. It's Psalms 81:3. Below the ram, I'm going to explain it in a way. There's different translations here, but this is really the correct translation, I believe. Below the ram's horn at the time of the new month, or Kadesh, I think that would be, / new month, or it could also obviously mean new moon. The full Uraka moon, the full moon, on our festival day. So every year Pesach is on a full moon. And for this is a law for Yisrael. Now, Passover reference, and then later on it talks about brought you out, you called in distress, brought you out of Mitzrayim, I answered you, removed shoulder from burden, removed you from slavery, okay? So let's try to go to Hallelujah real quick here. Hallelujah says they do a good job, better than Marshall, I think. Below the ram's horn at the time of the new moon, at the covering on our festival day. Now this word at the covering is keset. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong, keset, which can mean full moon or appointed time. And keset is only used twice in all scriptures, and Proverbs 7:20, which we have over here, this kind of confirms it. He took a bag of silver with him. He comes home on the day of the covering. So what is this day of the covering? This day of the covering also can be translated as full moon. It's when the moon is fully covered in her light. What else would be the day of the covering, So if you look into that, you can kind of here, you can see what I have written. There's different translations. So if you could pause the video, make sense of that. Marshall, he kind of translates it differently because he's on the solar only calendar. He's really biased with some stuff. So yeah. And Jubilees, we got a scripture. Sun is an oat, or used for days, Shabbats, months, feasts, years, Jubilees, and all seasons. So somebody might be like, see, it's sun's used for months, see? Okay. So if, like I said before, if you just use the lunar months only, your first month will drift way into winter and eventually fall. So you have to check, there's checks and balances here with this in the sky. It's a beautiful system, really. It checks and balances. So if you wait for equal parts day and night, like Enoch tells you to, and then you wait for the first new moon, then that won't ever happen. So the sun is used for months. And we'll see later that the translation of the word that means months has moon in it, but it's used in Enoch because there's solar months, there's 12 solar periods of time, which is like a month. And a month, even in the English, comes from moon. So the moon has a period of time which is a month. It's 29 days. It's different, 28 to 29 to 30 or something every month. And then the months in Enoch are 30, 30, 31, repeating 4 times to equal 364 days, 4 seasons, perfectly. So the sun and stars are in alignment. The moon is the only one that's goofy here. It's like a female, kind of a little goofy and emotional sometimes. No, sorry, but that's kind of the way it is. And females also have their period cycle is about pretty much the same as the moon, the amount of days. So Aries starts or is behind the setting sun during the start of spring, or equal parts day and night. Then and Aries is a symbol of a lamb, and it doesn't happen until like the March 18th. So if you're keeping Pesach before that, you're not in the symbol of the lamb, you're still in winter. Then during each solar Urach, a new star sign is started. So, till all 12 are complete, okay? But the interesting thing, I was surprised that Enoch, I thought it would have been Kadesh. When it talks about the months in Enoch, I thought the word would have been Kadesh, where basically, it's Kadesh for the 12 cycles of the sun. But nope, this doesn't, it's not, it's actually, let's see if I can find this real quick, sorry. Actually, it's not Kadesh, it's Urach, which is really a period of time, and it can be used for solar. It can be used for a solar period of time similar to a month, but within the word, Urach is Urach, or Uraka, or whatever, which is the moon. So, they go hand in hand. It's usually describing a month, a lunar month, but it can be, there are such things as solar months described in the book of Enoch. And you use them in checks and balance type system to figure out where you are. And you can use this anywhere on the flat earth. You don't have to be in Jerusalem or anything. Then during each solar Urach, a new star sign is started. Okay, so Exodus 2:2. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. This is that same word, Urachim, lunar month, okay? Or, I guess some could argue it'd be a solar month, but here's the problem with that, because in Acts 7:20, at the time Moses was born, and he was an ordinary child for 3 months, this Greek word, because the New Testament written in Greek, is menes, which that is directly related to the moon. Same thing in Hebrews, it's menes, which is a lunar month. If it was a solar month, it would be called Heliaskos Men, which equals a solar month in Greek after the god Helios, sun god. So they were definitely, this is talking about a lunar month, as we can see in the Greek here. So, come on. Seems Israel up to Greenland is, the equal parts day and night happens there. It's the largest part in the flat earth where the equal parts day and night happens from Israel up to Greenland. This year was the 17th. Kadesh appears 276 times in the Bible, mostly meaning new moon, but some people say it's new month, but a month is a moon cycle. Unless you're talking about a rare solar cycle, which also can be a month, or as we saw, Urach. Surprisingly, that word was used in Enoch and Jubilees, not Kadesh. But Kadesh, and it means renewal. So, like Strach says, the name of the moon is in that. Like, what's renewing? It's the moon's light. The sun doesn't obviously renew. It goes through gates, but the gates are they're not obvious in the sky. You have to kind of, judge them and mark them best you can. That's why it's good to use both, because both have benefits here, the sun and the moon. Urach appears 13 times and means moon cycle, or a period of time it takes for one moon cycle, usually. But it can also mean sun cycle, as we see in the Enoch. But the word moon is in the word Urach, which means month. Deuteronomy 21:13, a captive woman mourns for one Urach. And some other scriptures, Deuteronomy, Job, and Zechariah, as you can see here. I'll use this Urak word. It's used 13 times, but most of the scriptures, it's always Kadesh for a month. So another interesting tidbit. In Kings, we have month Ziv, Bul, month Ethaim, and now these are Canaanite Phoenician words that the Canaanite and Phoenicians used for their lunar months, not any solar months. They were on a lunar month thing, just like Babylon, just like Israel. The whole area was in lunar months. Now, if the Canaanites and Phoenicians used solar months, we'd be like, oh, see, that's evidence that the Urak thing really means a solar month. No, it only means that in Enoch because it's describing the sun and the 12 different stages and the gates it goes through. So now we get something really interesting here. The Zadokites and Essenes. Everybody's all up the Zadokite and Essenes thinking that they're all great and they were like the righteous ones and the Pharisees were bad. Yes, the Pharisees were bad. The Sadducees were bad. So were the Essenes. You'll see why. They changed stuff. They crossed stuff out. They changed. You're not supposed to add or take away from the Torah. It says that. So they're changing stuff. A man was unclean until evening, according to Leviticus here. Leviticus 15, 16 through 18. Temple scroll of the Essenes, what does that say? Unclean for 3 days, banned it from the holy city. So they add it 2 days. Torah, polygamy, and divorce are permitted. May not be wise, but they permit it. But in the Essenes, he shall not take upon her another wife, for she alone shall be with him all the days of her life. So that's a change to the Bible. Entry of the blind, Torah allowed in the temple unless serving as a priest, but the Essenes say no blind man shall enter it in this part here. Okay. The big one is if an animal falls into a pit. Let's see here. The Essenes say when it falls into a pit or a ditch, let him not raise it on Shabbat. So Yahusha and Paul were both rebuking the Essenes in their writings. Paul talks about there's people saying not to marry. There's people saying not to eat meats. Paul says bless whatever you get in the meat market, but the Essenes say don't marry sometimes, and they say in their writings not to eat any meats, and they would let people starve and eat grass and starve to death. Josephus was saying, but he was a Pharisee, so he's against them. But anyway, let's see what Yahusha says about what they just said. Which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on Shabbat, will not immediately pull him out? So he's addressing the Essenes there. Exodus and Deuteronomy, principle of helping a neighbor animal that has fallen. So Yahusha was lined up with the scriptures. The Essenes do not. They shall eat no fermented wine or strong drink, but we see in Sukkot you can have strong drinks, so they're making up their own stuff here. It's really bad. There's a lot of other things I have written here. Let me see here. Yeah, there's just, they wash the entrails differently. They could add this extra stuff, just like the Pharisees, making things burdensome and more complicated. So last part, the Essenes, a lot of this stuff, like where, I looked into the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's a lot more I can say. I want to make the video shorter here. So basically, we see the part in Ezekiel where they are facing the east, okay, and praying and worshiping the sun, and Ezekiel was shown this as a bad thing. And we see the Egyptians, this prayer to the dead in the Book of Dead, prayer to the sun in the Book of Dead. Homage to thee, O Ra, at thy rising thou risest in the horizon of the east of heaven. A shout of joy cometh from the mouth of all peoples. Thou sailest over the sky. So what do you know? Josephus talks about the Essenes. Before the sun is up, they utter no word or no matters, but offer to him certain prayers which have been handed down from their fathers, as though blessing him to rise. And then an example of the Essene prayers toward the sun. He shall bless him with the coming of light from its source, at the beginning of the dominion of light, with its circuit, when it is gathered to its appointed habitation. So they are a little obsessed with the sun. They made up the sun-only calendar, possibly. There's evidence of that because they are obsessed with the sun. They wake up every morning and pray to the sun, even though they're kind of praying to Yah, but they're kind of praying to. There is, other Mesopotamian religions saying that the light of the sun is the light of God. So they're greeting this light of the sun as like it's like the light of God. And yes, the sun grows stuff and stuff, but this is not scriptural, not a Torah to face the east and pray and stuff like that. So, do not do that. We see in Ezekiel, he was shown this on purpose, and we see the Essenes doing it, and even Josephus, the Pharisee, they are also bad. They are also a day off in their calculation of the first month and first day and all that. But, so we see all these different groups in Messiah's time going off, even these sons of Zadok. Now, I know the scripture that talks about the righteous parts so there's probably different groups. Some of them split off and became the Pharisees. Some of them may have split off and became the Essenes, the Sadducees, and then some of them remained righteous and kept the Torah, So you can't say all the sons of Zadok were perfect. They obviously went into different factions and everything was all confused and everything. So shalom, this is my calendar study. I think it's comprehensive and good. To use the sun, moon, and stars, you wait for equal parts day and night, as Enoch talks about, and you have your intercalary days. Everything like that is true, but Enoch also talks about the moon, and we see in other scriptures that the moon is used for months. So the sun is used for a year, and also has months, solar months, if you want to, kind of mark the gates in the heavens somehow and see where the sun is transitioning to these different gates. And then when it gets one direction all the way to the south, it turns around, heads back to the north. And, a trip to the south and a trip back is 1 year in the sun. That's cool. But you also need the moon is for months. And the Shabbat is a 7-day endless cycle that never stops. 6 days you work, 7 days you rest. Now, sometimes the feast of Pesach, every 7 years or so, would land on a Shabbat, which the Essenes made a big controversy over, and they, said the Pharisees were so bad because this happened. But look what else the Essenes are doing. So all the doctrine that people say now is kind of like coming from the Essenes, even if they don't know it. So it's weird. And there is temple sacrifices on Shabbat. And then the Essenes even have in their writings that they celebrate the new moon. And if the new moon landed on a Shabbat, they said do the Shabbat sacrifices first and then do the new moon sacrifices after that. So they did acknowledge the moon somewhat, but some people just totally throw out the moon. And you should be able to, mark your feast using the sun, moon, and stars like it says, because they're all used for signs, and like it says in Genesis. So again, the sun is for the year, the start of the year. The moon is for the months. And the Shabbat is a 7-day cycle. And that kind of answers everything. And the zodiac signs are the star symbols, align perfectly with the sun. And on Pesach, 2 of 3 years, it's a lamb. And the 3rd year, it's a bull. Just like we see in the animal vision in Enoch, where the lambs become a bull through the power of Yah and through Yahusha and what he did for us. Hallelujah and shalom.